guys, it's Bree. Welcome back. I'm really excited about today's episode because I'm speaking about a film that I have a real passion for, and it happens to be one of the greatest films ever made, Vertigo. Vertigo is a psychological thriller released in 1958. It stars James Stewart and Kim Novak, is directed and produced by Alfred Hitchcock, and was based on the 1954 novel The Living and the Dead by the writing duo, I'm totally gonna butcher this, Boulot-Najac. And I took French in high school, so that's pretty pathetic. But for a long time, the generally accepted greatest film of all time was Citizen Kane by Orson Welles. It was only very recently, like within the last decade, that Vertigo was considered a worthy rival to Citizen Kane. Vertigo was a highly anticipated film because of Hitchcock's reputation, but received very mixed reviews, was a box office flop, and was basically dismissed as a failed attempt by Hitchcock to try something bold and new. This was of course before the massive success of Psycho in 1960, the film that would set Hitchcock's name in infamy. Vertigo is absolutely one of my favorite films next to Marnie and Rebecca, which are also directed by Alfred Hitchcock, and I hope to explore those in later videos. Hitchcock was an expressionistic filmmaker, and I think one of the reasons his films have stood the test of time is because they explore realms of the human psyche that were at the time untouched, especially when it came to identity, discovering who you are. His films came out during periods of human history where people were expected to be and act a certain way, and Hitchcock loved to look beyond the outward appearance and see the surreal and the visceral and the colorful and the terrifying aspects of the self. I'm going to start with explaining the plot of Vertigo, so if you haven't seen it, please pause the video, go watch it, come back, because there are major spoilers ahead. The opening credits reveal a mysterious-looking woman, and we are pulled into her eye, exploring a full display of spirals, foreshadowing the twists and turns we are about to experience throughout the film. We then land in an intense scene in which Detective John Ferguson, aka Scotty, and another police officer are pursuing a suspect across the rooftops of 1950 San Francisco. They leap across a particularly awkward gap between buildings, and Scotty ends up hanging off a ledge. Gripping on for dear life, Scotty looks down and suffers an acrophobic attack, making him extremely disorientated. The other police officer tries to save Scotty, but accidentally falls off the building himself. Some months later, we see Scotty has since quit the police force due to suffering PTSD, namely survivor's guilt, and of course his acrophobia, which gives him vertigo. His best friend and former fiancé, Midge, encourages Scotty to rejoin the police force, rightly claiming the accident was not his fault, while also mentioning that only another intense emotional shock would cure him of his fear of heights. Although it is very obvious Midge cares deeply for Scotty, it seems that she always wants to be involved in his life while keeping him at an arm's distance. Scotty then goes to meet up with an old friend, Galvin Elster, at an industrial shipyard which Galvin owns. Director cameo here. Galvin informs Scotty that he invited him over, knowing about his early retirement from the police force and the reasons behind it, to ask him to spy on his wife, Madeline, whom he suspects of being possessed by the spirit of another woman. Yes, that's what I said. Galvin describes her odd behavior, the most significant being short-term memory loss. Scotty initially declines due to his personal beliefs, but eventually takes the job to help his seemingly desperate friend. So I'm just gonna pause the plot right here just to point out some things to remember down the line from this scene. 1. Galvin is fully aware of Scotty's fear of heights. 2. Galvin understands that because Scotty is no longer attached to the police force, he is not obligated to report his findings. 3. When asked, Scotty does not believe in possession or the supernatural in general. We first see Madeline as viewed by Scotty in a restaurant, and she is clearly visible from across the room in a stunning green shawl, surrounded by vibrant red walls. Madeline does not notice as Scotty begins to tail her to a flower shop, a Spanish mission with a graveyard, where Madeline observes the grave of a Carlotta Valdez, then to the Palace of the Legion of Honor, where Madeline views a portrait of the said Carlotta, and a hotel where Madeline has rented a room under the name Carlotta Valdez. After going to Midge's historian friend for help, Scotty learns of the tragic past of Carlotta, Madeline's maternal great-grandmother, whose lover left her and took their child. After wandering the streets of San Francisco, begging strangers for her child, Carlotta eventually committed suicide at the age of 26, the same age Madeline is now. Scotty relays all this information back to Galvin, who confirms he knew about Carlotta and now fears worse things are coming. Scotty continues to tail Madeline, eventually ending up at San Francisco Bay, where Madeline promptly throws herself in. Scotty rescues her and takes her back to his apartment. Madeline awakes, obviously confused but unafraid of Scotty. As they casually talk, it becomes clear Madeline doesn't remember what she's been doing the last few days, nor does she remember throwing herself into the bay. She abruptly sneaks out when Scotty is on the phone, as Midge watches from her car outside. Scotty continues to tail Madeline but finds himself following her right back to his own apartment, where Madeline apologizes for leaving so suddenly the night before. After some small talk, Scotty asks Madeline to wander with him. They go to Big Basin Redwood State Park, where Madeline soon goes into a trance, now appearing to be Carlotta. Scotty tries to reason with Madeline, believing this to be a mental illness rather than possession, and demands to know why Madeline jumped into San Francisco Bay. Madeline can't or won't answer, and they depart to the shore next to the park, where Madeline shares her great fear of this unknown force consuming her. She begs Scotty not to leave her, and giving in to his own intense desire, Scotty kisses Madeline and begins their strange affair. Next day, Scotty visits Midge at her request, where Midge reveals she made a mock painting of Carlotta with her own face. Scotty is rightly repulsed by the bad joke and leaves. Like, seriously, Midge, what were you thinking, girl? Next morning at dawn, Madeline suddenly shows up at Scotty's apartment, claiming she had a dream about a Spanish mission and being pulled into the darkness. From what Madeline describes, Scotty deduces that she is talking about the old mission of San Juan Bautista, I hope I said that correctly, about 90 miles south of the city. Later that day, they travel to the mission, where Scotty is convinced that Madeline has been there before and simply cannot remember. In Scotty's own words, there's an answer for everything. Remember that line. Madeline is suddenly drawn to the bell tower of the mission, imploring Scotty not to follow her, but telling him, it shouldn't have happened this way, and if you lose me, know that I loved you and wanted to go on loving you. Scotty lets her go, but then realizes he's just let a mentally unstable and potentially suicidal woman go up a very tall tower alone. He attempts to pursue her, but of course he only gets so far up the stairs before he has a vertigo attack and becomes paralyzed in fear. Scotty hears a scream, and upon looking out a nearby window, he witnesses Madeline fall from the top of the tower to her death. In a state of complete shock, he wanders out of the mission and returns home. Of course, after the funeral, an official inquiry is made into Madeline's death. Scotty is not held responsible, but is basically scolded for his disability, his lack of better judgment when it came to Madeline's suicidal tendencies, and his actions directly after Madeline's death. Galvin informs Scotty that he is wrapping up Madeline's affairs and is leaving the country, most likely never to return. Sometime after the hearing, Scotty has a mental breakdown due to the overall stress of Madeline's death, which is a rampant mix of his years of experience with investigations, his knowledge of the facts, and the seemingly supernatural elements of this case. Scotty is released from the hospital, and in his grief he finds himself obsessively revisiting places that remind him of Madeline. Like Carlotta, Scotty wanders the streets of San Francisco, hoping to see his lost loved one, until one day, he actually does. Seeing an exact look-alike of Madeline walking down the street with her friends, Scotty follows her back to her apartment almost in a trance. Scotty knocks on this complete stranger's door and begins inappropriately questioning her about who she is and where she came from. This woman is rightly anxious of Scotty's sudden arrival and odd behavior, but for some reason, she trusts this complete stranger enough to let him into her apartment and answer his questions. Her name is Judy, she's from Kansas, and she has been living in the city for some time. She eventually realizes that Scotty believes she looks like his long-lost love and sympathizes with his loss. Scotty apologizes and asks Judy to have dinner with him. Again, despite all the red flags, Judy agrees to have dinner with Scotty. As soon as Scotty leaves, We then find out why Judy was not afraid of Scotty when everything is revealed in her flashback. Judy was Madeline. Galvin basically hired Judy to pretend to be Madeline and pretend to be possessed, pretend to be go to all these places, jump into the bay, lead Scotty to the mission, everything. Everything was fake, everything was pretend. The day of Madeline's death, Galvin broke his real wife's neck and dragged her to the top of the bell tower. Judy, pretending to be suicidal, ran up the bell tower, knowing that Scotty would not be able to follow her. When she reaches the top, Galvin threw his wife's body off the tower for Scotty to witness, and Judy screamed because of her instant regret of what was happening. Fearing Scotty may find out what happened, Judy is about to ditch town when she realizes that she would like to see Scotty again, because she did genuinely fall in love with him. That was not faked, nor was it planned. She decides that she's going to take on the task of making Scotty fall in love with her as Judy, not Madeline. However, Scotty quickly becomes obsessed with turning Judy into Madeline, even going so far as to offer to provide for her financially so long as she agrees to take on the exact likeness of Madeline, clothing, hair, makeup, everything. Because Judy is so in love with Scotty, she does this for him. I know, this is not going to end well. Scotty finally has his Madeline return to him in an aura of intense green glowing light. His absolute desire fulfilled, he realizes he is indeed trapped in the past, but is happy to remain there with his Madeline. They begin a life together through this very odd agreement until Judy puts on Madeline's necklace. That's right, the necklace that the real Madeline inherited from Carlotta. For whatever reason, Judy decided to keep it, a piece of evidence from a murder, and in that moment, it all becomes clear for Scotty. He sees everything and knows exactly what has happened to him. He doesn't show his realization to Judy at first, instead offering to take Judy somewhere different for dinner. They then drive the 90 miles south to the old mission where Madeline died. We can see Judy becoming more and more uncomfortable as she realizes where they are headed, but holds steady, not giving herself up. Scotty pulls Judy out of the car and begins to drag her up those same steps once more. Judy fakes ignorance till the last possible moment, when Scotty reveals it was the necklace that gave her away. Scotty rightfully loses his to her as Judy confirms how Scotty believes the murder occurred. By the time he's got all he needed to hear from Judy, Scotty realizes he has made it to the top of the stairs without suffering a vertigo attack. Scotty drags Judy kicking and screaming into the bell tower as she frantically apologizes for everything, begging him to take her back as she is. Scotty fell in love with Judy, and only Judy, but despite now knowing this, he still calls her Madeline for the last time as they reconcile. Suddenly, a ghostly shadow appears from the staircase, frightening Judy and causing her to step back and fall off the tower to her death. The last shot being Scotty looking down at her body, this time truly confirming he has indeed lost his Madeline forever. I know. That is a lot to take in. But now that you know the plot, you're probably thinking, okay, it's certainly an intricate plot, but what makes that the greatest film ever made? I think it's because if you look beyond the story, you see this almost insane amount of planning for almost every shot in this film. From art direction, to dialogue, to costumes, to music, to performances, everything is almost perfectly executed. But in my opinion, one of the greatest elements this film has to contribute to its reputation is that upon a second viewing, you will notice that Hitchcock and his team carefully laced the film with spoilers. So many, in fact, it's almost like Hitchcock knew his expressionistic film style would be too much for the audience at the time. So he flat out tells his audience what is going on to help them understand him and his direction style. The opening credits show a very shady looking woman who literally has mystery stirring within her, basically saying, the woman is lying. If the viewer can quickly grasp the use of colors in this film and what they represent, specifically red and green, spoilers can also be deduced in nearly every scene, with red meaning obsession, lust, and passion, while green represents the essence of the beautiful, elegant, and poised Madeline, and the danger and mystery that surrounds her. To me, the perfect example is when Scotty first sees Judy, and Judy is wearing a green dress, indicating that she is Madeline, at least the Madeline Scotty knew. Another spoiler happens in this same scene. When Scotty follows Judy back to her apartment building, Twelfth Night is playing next door. If you don't know what Twelfth Night is, it's a Shakespearean play which involves a woman masquerading as someone else. But upon a quick Google search, the following description of Twelfth Night is: Twelfth Night is about illusion, deception, disguises, madness, and the extraordinary things that love will cause us to do and to see. Which is a pretty good description of the plot of Vertigo. Upon first viewing of this film, you could easily mistake it for having a supernatural plot the first 2/3 of the runtime. However, upon second viewing, Scotty's reaction to Galvin's questions about his possession beliefs is a huge spoiler. Galvin hired Scotty because he knew about Scotty's fear of heights, which allowed him to coordinate his murder plot around Scotty's acrophobia. However, Galvin should have known better than to hire Scotty as soon as Scotty said that he did not believe in possession. We know now that Scotty never truly fell for the trick, and that's because it was a part of Scotty's occupation on the police force to not let superstitions interfere with the facts. Part of Scotty's mental breakdown halfway through the film is because he cannot accept what happened to Madeline. Not her death, but the possession. Although it's very obvious that dialogue can give away spoilers, this one line indicated how the movie was going to turn out.
Do you believe that someone out of the past, someone dead, can enter and take possession of a living being?
No.
There was no possession, and Scotty knew it. The road to becoming one of the most revered films of all time was, as I said before, a very long one for Vertigo. I've always compared the initial failure of Vertigo to that of John Carpenter's The Thing or David Fincher's Fight Club, in the sense that we can look back at these numbers and reviews and think, did y'all even watch the film? But the reality is, when these films were released, society was just not ready for what they saw. Plain and simple. There are always going to be great films that come out, and nobody gets it at first. But eventually, they will get it. Is this the greatest film ever made? I would say yes. However, I've been touching on aspects about the film that I believe make it the greatest. I certainly love it, and it has always had the power to pull me back for another viewing. But to be the greatest film ever made, it has to have a general vote in its favor, and that is up to the viewers like you to decide. Once again, I cannot emphasize enough how much you need to see this film. This is definitely one of my shorter reviews, and that's honestly because I'm not trying to prove anything that isn't already there. Vertigo is an excellent film, but to be the greatest of all time, as I said, that's up to viewers like you. You have to go out and watch it and give your opinion on it. But yeah, go see Vertigo. Go see it. Go get an opinion about it. It's a great film. It's an excellent film. You certainly won't be disappointed. Even if you don't think it's the greatest film ever made, you will not be disappointed by Vertigo. But yeah, that's my review for this month. Next month it'll be another fun video, and it's gonna be my birthday month, so I have to pick something that's really good to celebrate my birthday. But yeah, I will see you guys next time. Bye.